Hello there and welcome to another episode of the Photography Made Simple podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. Now, I have a question for you. What photographers do you know of whose work you would know instantly? Whose photographs you could see maybe on Pinterest or Instagram or on a website, and you would say, oh, that looks like a photo from so-and-so photographer, before you even see their name next to it. I think it is amazing when they can do that. I mean, how can we tell their photos apart from the millions of other photographs out there? Well, the reason is they all have a single element that they share, something that each of them has, and that is a unique photography voice and style. They have a way of expressing themselves and presenting their photos in a way that is totally individual to them. And that's what we're going to talk about today, how we can find your unique photography, voice, and style. So stay tuned. Hey there, I'm Audrey-Anne, founder of Live Snap Love, and I'm on a mission to help photographers just like you grow their photography skills quickly and in a way that feels simple and easy so you can shorten the learning curve and get photos you love faster. I created this Photography Made Simple podcast to share simple, actionable techniques, helpful insights, and practical advice on all things photography. So if you're itching to take your photos to the next level, whatever that level may be, you're in the perfect place. So let's get started. So style and voice are two things that photographers and all artists in general talk about a lot. But what do we really mean when we say that? What is your style and what is your voice? And since this isn't often a concrete thing that you can kind of grasp hold of or learn how to do in a tutorial or have someone else show you or just tell you what to do, how do you even start to find your photography voice? And that's exactly what we're going to look at today. What style is, what your voice is, and I'm going to give you 4 different tools that you can use to start to unearth your own unique photography voice and style. But before we can begin to talk about how to find it, we need to know what those 2 things, voice and style, actually are in the first place. Because your voice and your style are actually 2 different things, but equally and probably confusingly the same. So let me explain that. Let's start with your photography voice. Your photography voice is the thing that makes what you create different from every other photographer out there. It's how you see the world. It's your viewpoint on a subject. It's how you interact with people. It's your unique experiences and your very unique feelings. It is essentially you. And that's why 2 different photographers can visit the same location, have the same subjects available to shoot, and in the same lighting conditions, and capture totally different photos because they each saw the scene in a different way and then brought their own unique perspective to it. It's also why you can look at an image from another photographer and it might evoke different feelings and emotions than another person might feel because you're bringing your life experiences to the viewing of an image as well. There is a quote by, I think it's Anais Nin, I'm not sure if I'm saying that name right, but that quote sums this up perfectly. And it is, "We do not see things as they are, we see them as we are." And that essentially is your voice. Now, your style, on the other hand, is how you express and show that voice. We can't use words in photography, obviously. So we have to express our thoughts and our feelings and that viewpoints we have of the world through what we include and even what we don't include in our photographs. Our style can be anything in the frame. It could be the colors we choose to use, the contrast or the softness of our photos, the light we prefer to use, the exposure, the perspective, the lenses that we use, how we edit our images, whether we include props or not in the frame. All of that, everything that is in the frame is what is in our style. So our style is the tools we use to show our voice. And the 2 almost come together into one. Our voice is shown through our style and our style shows our voice, and sometimes they can even be one and the same. But if I were to put this in really simple terms, Voice and style is simply what you say and how you say it. So think about if you were having a conversation with someone. How do you get your point across? It will be in the words that you use, for sure, but it will also be in the tone of your voice. You might use your hands a lot to kind of show something. It might be non-verbal cues, like how you position your body, or whether you wrap your arms around yourself, or the expression that you have on your face. So I always say that I can tell when my husband is in a bad mood, even when he says he's absolutely fine, because the tone of his voice and the expression in his face gives the game away. So he can tell me he's not grumpy at all. He's absolutely fine. It's not him, it's me. But the words and what his body language is telling me don't actually match up. And that sometimes is what happens with photography when we don't think about both voice and style, when what we want to say isn't matched by the style that we use, or vice versa. And that's when we get this kind of disconnect and our photos don't feel authentically like ours. And that brings me very neatly onto what having a voice and style is not. So it is not simply a very specific way of processing your image. It is definitely not using the same preset on every single image that you take. And it's not sticking to photographing the same subjects in the same way over and over again. I do wish it were that simple, believe me. And I actually really completely understand the desire for it to be that simple, because then finding your photography style is something easy and quick. If we can find someone who takes photographs we love, then we can just copy their style. And better yet, if they sell presets, then hey presto, we can buy the preset pack for $50, use that on every single image, and boom, we're done. We have a photography style. Of course, it's so much harder, and it's going to take a lot more time to actually think about what your unique viewpoint is in the world, and how to bring your thoughts and your feelings and your experiences and your personality and show that in your photos, and then be able to bring that together consistently. Now, I know that I really struggled with this idea of having a voice and style in photography. And I think the reason I really struggle with that is I'm not kind of wishy-washy. I don't really do touchy-feely kind of things. I'm very, very practical. So I like a step-by-step to-do list. I like things to be in a methodical fashion. If you've been in any of my courses, you'll know that I have frameworks for just about everything. I really like everything being in a kind of straight line, so to speak, very methodical. And I think your photography style and voice isn't that practical. We can't really have this step-by-step to do and we've got it, it's something entirely different. So for me, it's something that I struggled with. I still struggle with a little bit. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a couple of examples here, both in terms of if you are the photographer, how you can maybe show your voice and your style and what that means. And also another example about you as a viewer and how you pick up different things from a photo. So let's start with the example of a photographer and how having a different voice and style might look in two different types of images. So let's just take the example of being a senior portrait photographer. So you as an individual may look at this period of time in a senior's life and think, what an exciting time this is for them. There's so many new opportunities coming their way, and you just feel so excited for them to dive out into the world. So that's your viewpoint, that's your feelings and your personality. In some ways, that's your voice coming into that image. And then we want to kind of show that in our style. So in that case, you might ask your subject to dress in really bright, cheerful colors. You might use open shade rather than backlight to really help those colors pop. You might even use props like really bright balloons. You might have your subject laugh or twirl or jump. And when it comes to editing, it might be a really clean edit, but with lots of color and contrast to really make them pop. So you can see that our feelings there of how we feel about this time in a senior's life also then leads to what we do in the frame. Now, another senior portrait photographer photographing the same subjects, even possibly in the same location, they will bring a different viewpoint to it, for example. They may see this time in a senior's life more wistfully. They may think, oh, this is their last time to be kids. They're moving on to adulthood. And it feels as much about celebrating the last days of childhood as it is looking to the future. So it's a different viewpoint from that first example I gave you. But with that viewpoint, again, because that changes, we might change our style here. You may choose for your subjects to wear more soft, muted colours rather than that bright pop that we spoke about a moment ago. You might use backlight because that gives that more dreamy and serene look to your photos. And maybe instead of having your subjects smile and laugh, you're going to photograph them looking more wistful. Your edits might be softer too. Now, that doesn't mean to say that those viewpoints have to do those things. Those are just examples. But the thing I want you to see here is, do you see how the same types of photographs, in this example, senior photos, can be different purely based on how the photographer feels about this time? And how the in-camera and then editing choices can change based on that. Now, I want to give you another example, and rather than this being a photographer taking the photos, I want to give you an example of how your unique viewpoint and how you see the world also changes how you view photos. And this was an example that was given to me in a workshop, and it's stayed with me ever since because it really makes you think about how you as a person brings with you to art, both in terms of creating it and in viewing it. So in this workshop, we were shown a photo where it was obviously taken from a boat, and it was dark, it was at night, and it was looking across the water back to the beachfront, and there was lights there. There's obviously maybe some bars or restaurants. There was people milling around, and it was taken from the boat. It was dark. You could see across the water. It was a little bit choppy, and you're looking back onto the shore with these lights and these people. And then we were all asked to give what we felt about this image and the feelings that it evoked. So you had one group of people who said, it just feels so serene. You're in this boat and you're watching all that life there on the shore, but it's so calm and so peaceful where you are, and you're just bobbing around in the water. Then you had another group of people who said, that actually really makes me feel quite uneasy. I feel like I'm drifting away from the shore and people can't see me, and I'm actually starting to panic because I'm getting further and further from the shore. And then you had another group of people who said, this actually makes me feel panicked. I feel like I'm drowning and I'm trying to get attention and nobody can see me from the shore. So you had this same image, and you as the viewer, or these people as the viewer, brought their own unique experiences and their viewpoints and what's happened to them in life and how they feel about various things, and they brought that to the image. Now, I don't know what this photographer actually wanted to say in that image, and in some ways, it doesn't really matter. It's that he may or she may have had one feeling that they had when they produced it, but then you've always got to take into account that the viewer is going to have a different feeling from it entirely because they also bring their experiences into it. So I hope that those two examples help you understand what we mean when we say that our voice is unique, and that when we create photos and when we view photos, we're bringing into the photo all the life experiences and our personality and everything else into it. And we also now can see how your voice can also differ from your style, but how the two actually come together. A voice without being able to have the tools to put that into practice, you're not going to be able to show your voice effectively. And if you just have a style, but without actually having any words or feelings or emotions that you want to portray, then you're not going to have this kind of well-rounded, well-balanced voice and style in photography. So now that we know what voice and style are in photography, and more importantly, what they're not, how on earth do we start to find ours? So the first thing to realize is that your voice already exists. It isn't something that will suddenly appear one day, plucked from thin air, or be magically conjured up by scrolling through Instagram. It is already there. It is already part of who you are. That's why simply copying another person's style doesn't work, because that's when you end up with this disconnect between your style and your voice, because one of them doesn't belong to you. So if our voice is already inside us, that's good news, right? It is, but the bad news is that finding it will probably not happen overnight. It will take time and patience to go digging around inside yourself until you find what makes you tick as a photographer and bring it out to the surface. And then possibly even more time to figure out how to show that with your style and then consistently infuse your work with it. And I have to say that your style will probably evolve over time, because if you think about it, you evolve over time as a person. The person that you are in your 20s is far different from the person that you are in your 40s, and I dare say different again in your 60s. It will be different when you're the parent of a small child to a parent of a teenager, or when your kids have all left home, for example. So you are growing every year as a person, and so therefore your photography style and your voice will probably grow as well. Now, I did say that it will probably not happen overnight, and I say probably because some people do seem to have a strong voice right from the second they pick up their camera. The only thing for them was then learning the skills to be able to express it through their style. For others, it just doesn't come that easily, and it certainly didn't for me. So for me, I thought the way to do it was to go on Instagram, find someone else's photographs that I love, and then use that as a kind of template. So sort of like shopping for a photography style like you would for a dress. And I certainly did. I found several photography styles that I loved. Many photographers. I was like, oh, their photographs are amazing. I'd love my images to look just like that. So one example would be that light and airy look that you see many photographers have. So I actually tried kind of going in that direction, but then I found myself continually taking photos that weren't that light and airy. And actually, after a little while, I realized that as pretty as it is, it really just isn't me. And then I saw someone else, and they had child photos, and there was lots of bright color, and it was really fun and sort of giggly, and they included props, and I was like, oh, that's great. That could be a way to go. And then I would go off and try that. But again, it still didn't feel right. If I can go back to my shopping for a dress analogy, it was like being in the store and then finding the same dresses that my friends wore. But then when I tried them on, they just didn't suit me. And sometimes it was fairly clear why they didn't suit me. But then other times I couldn't put my finger on why, but it just wasn't right. They just felt uncomfortable. They didn't feel me. And so I would be trying it, but I would end up falling back into something else because it just wasn't my style. And what I really didn't appreciate at the time is that we can love another photographer's work without that necessarily meaning that that is the style for us. It's just like we have friends who have radically different personalities to us. We still love them. We maybe even love them more for the fact that they are totally opposite personality-wise from us, but we don't feel the need to change our whole being to become like them. And that's really the same when you're looking at other people's photographs. You can absolutely love them. They can really speak to you, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that is for you and that will suit your voice and your style. Now, it actually took me many years to get to a place where I feel comfortable with how I take and edit photos. I know that I do not have as strong a voice as other photographers. It's something that I feel I need to spend some time working on. And it's certainly, as I was saying about your style evolving because your voice changes. And that's happening here with me. My reason for picking up a camera originally was when my son was born. I wanted to capture all the moments of our lives. It was so precious to me because I knew I wouldn't be having any more children. And I really just wanted to capture it all and hold on to it and freeze that moments in time. And now as my son's older, I'd still like to do that, but he's less accommodating than he used to be. Even if he was as accommodating, I don't see as much of him anymore. He's, longer days at school. He goes out after school with his friends. He's awake the week. Just don't see him to the same degree as you do when they're younger. You don't have that time that you had. So he still features heavily for sure, but I have to almost address how am I changing and evolving as a photographer now that I'm in a different phase of my life. I'm now the parent of a teenager rather than the parent of a toddler. So I know that there's something that I need to do with that, and it's something that I need to work on. So if our voice is already within us and we don't want to just go shopping for it like we would a dress, how do we even start to work on finding our own photography voice? So as I said before, it's not something we can simply run out and find or learn through a tutorial. But there are some things that I think you can do that can be really helpful in understanding your voice, kind of pulling it out of you and also nurturing it and really understanding how you can bring that into your own photos. So I'm going to share some tools with you now that can help you, but I do want you to know these aren't how-tos. And I've said, if you know me at all, you know I'm big on the how-tos. I'm a huge fan of teaching how to do something step by step by step. So this isn't that. It's more tools that you can use to chisel out your voice from inside you. Unfortunately, I can't get in there and take it out for you, but I can give you these tools that will help you do it for yourself. So here are 4 different things you can do that can help you find your own unique photography voice and style. So the first tool is to look at other photographers' work. Now, note that I said look, not copy. We definitely don't want to try and steal another photographer's work, and we definitely don't want to take their style and say that that's our photography style. The idea is simply to draw inspiration from other photographers you like rather than simply imitate them. So you can start collating these photographs together. If you use Pinterest, you might want to create a board. You can start pinning photos to it that you love. If you're more of an Instagram user, you could try saving photos into collections on Instagram from the various photographers I'm sure you probably follow already on Instagram, or you could just create a folder on your hard drive and start saving the photos to that, whatever works for you. And then once you have all those photos together, I want you to start to think about what it is that appeals to you about these photographs. And then we can see how you could fit that into your own work. So for example, I do actually like a lot of the light and airy photographs you see online, even though many of them can look a bit cookie cutter, can be a little bit overdone, everyone's kind of doing it. So for me, I definitely don't want my photographs to look exactly like that. But what I did love about that style and what I tried to take into it in my own work is the simplicity of it. It's really nice and clean and minimalistic. So I take that element that's why I love that photographs. It's not my style, but I'm taking what I like about it and thinking, that's what I like. How can I infuse that into my own work? Another photographer I love uses the colors in her images in such an important way. She really brings them to life. And it taught me that as much as I love simplicity, I do like to have a bit more color in my work as well. And I think that's one of the reasons light and airy doesn't work for me, is I love color too. Now, another photographer I love shoots almost exclusively in black and white. Now, that doesn't mean that I need to shoot exclusively in black and white. It's more that I love the way that she plays with light and shadow, and black and white really brings that out. And again, I'm not copying her style. I'm saying, well, actually, I love the way that the light and the shadow play. So I can think about how I can incorporate that into my own work. I love yet another photographer's work because it's so ethereal and dreamy. That inspired me to find the beauty in the mundane. Even though her work is all portraits, I can take that feeling and add it to the type of photos that I take. So I've taken some things that I've loved from photographers that I admire: simplicity, clean color tones, good use of light and shadow, and finding the beauty all around me without actually copying anyone. Now, I could go on because I have other people who inspire me, but the point is, none of those photographers are me, but there are elements in each of their work that inspires mine. So create your board, create your folder on Instagram or folder on your hard drive, whatever works best for you, and just look at them as a whole. Go through each one and think, what is it about these photos that you admire? without trying to copy each one. You might also find a common thread. I mean, what I've described here, light and airy, dark and moody, black and white, full of colour, they're very, very different photography styles. You might find that actually you're saving a lot of the same style over and over. Okay, moving on now to tool number 2 is to look at what is already around you. Now, as I said in the beginning, you don't suddenly become a completely different person when you pick up a camera. Instead, you are bringing your own unique perspective, personality, and experiences to your photos. So I want you to have a little look at yourself. I want you to think, what is it that you like to do with your time? What's your personality like? Are you an introvert or an extrovert? Are you best suited to loud parties and socializing, or do you prefer smaller, more intimate groups? Another thing you can do is look at the clothes you wear. Do you gravitate toward really bright jewel tones and you wear lots of different colors together? Or are you more about bold prints, or are you more classic and muted? Do you wear flowing dresses or jeans and flats? Look at your home. Is it warm and cozy, bright and bold, calm or serene? What colours do you have? Do you have lots of sentimental knickknacks everywhere, or do you like your space to feel more minimalist? I know that by looking around you at your home, your clothes, your surroundings, by thinking about where you like to be, your favourite places, how you like to socialise, your favourite things to do, they can all help you see the direction that you might want to be heading in with your photos too. At the very least, it can help you see if there's a disconnect between what you think you want to be for your style and your voice and what the rest of your life and your personality is telling you. So to use me again as an example, I can see my personality in my photos, and I can the more that I have progressed in my photography journey. Because regardless of the subject, I crave simplicity. I don't like anything overly cluttered in my photos. I want them to feel kind of quite calm, but I do like kind of colour in there as well. I don't like it to be too dull. If you were to come into my home, that's pretty much what you would find. It's very clean, it's uncluttered, I don't have knickknacks everywhere. Simple colours. I've got lots of white, but I have that punched out with black and lots of pops of brighter colours throughout the rooms. So I can see exactly my home sort of represents also my images. I'm also quite an introvert, as I said, and if I photograph people, my favourites are most likely to be the ones where their subjects have their eyes closed or they aren't even looking at the camera. That's the introvert in me coming out. So my photos do reflect a lot about me, and that also helped me to see where there was a disconnect when I was taking other people's styles and not really seeing whether they matched my specific personality. Okay, moving on now to tool number 3, which is to go through your own work. So what I'd like to challenge you to do is create a portfolio of your own favourite work, especially if you have been shooting for a little while. So go through all of your own images and pull the ones that were favourites or that evoke an emotion in you, even if they are not the most technically proficient ones. So that is an important point. This isn't the time to be critical of focus or having the perfect composition. We're really looking at the big picture here. Look at the images that speak to you. So you can do this in numerous ways. If you have Lightroom, you can create a collection for them or just create a folder on your hard drive and copy them there. Again, whatever works for you. So once you've selected your favourites and you've got them all together, go through them one by one. And I want you to have a pen and a bit of paper beside you and jot down the reasons why they are speaking to you. Why is it you like those photos? What made you choose them out of the hundreds of photos you probably have? So what colours do you see showing up? What light are they using? What emotions do you see there? Where are they taking? Are they indoors or outdoors? Is there some type of editing that you do on some of them that you love? What we're looking for here is some kind of consistency. We're looking to pull things that we see quite often in different photos. So you'll see that it doesn't have to be every image for sure, but maybe a lot of it uses warm light or warm backlight. You you can maybe see, well, actually, that's a pattern there that I kind of like to have that in my images. Or I really like these images where the subjects look really happy and carefree as opposed to that one where they look all serious. Again, it doesn't matter what it is. I can't tell you what to look for in your photos, but I can tell you that you're looking at things that speak to you, that you can kind of start to jot down and see that consistency in the things that you like. Okay, moving on now to our fourth and final tool, and that is to shoot from the heart. Now, maybe this goes without saying, but I'll say it anyway. The key to infusing your voice into your photos is to shoot from the heart. Often you get stuck thinking too much about what you should be shooting, or what you think other people want to see from you, or what they might think, that we forget to shoot what we love. Social media can have a huge influence on you as a photographer, and as much as it can be a force for good, it can also really hinder us as photographers. It can make us second guess our work, it can make us compare ourselves, often unfavorably to other photographers, and it can cause us to shoot for other people than ourselves. We're thinking more about the likes we'll get on that image, how many people will like it, whether people will have comments on it. And you tend to try and play it a little bit more safe because you're worried about what people will think. Like many of my fellow photographers, I still find myself doing that today. So I'm willing to bet that you do the same, whether you fully realize it or not. So I want you to think about why you picked up a camera in the first place. In fact, imagine that you are shooting exclusively for yourself. If you were the only person to ever see your photos, what would you shoot? What risks would you take? What would you not care about? Get back into that why you are creating photos and create them exclusively for yourself. If you then want to go and share them on social media, so be it. That is entirely up to you. But shoot from the heart and take photos that make you happy. Above all, I want you to remember that there is only one you in the universe. Our unique blend of insights, personality, fears, experiences, and desire inform who we are as photographers. And that is a unique blend because there's nobody else in the world that has the same things that you have. As a photographer, you just need to give yourself the space and the time to figure out how to infuse that into your photos. So one thing I want to stress before I go is that I do feel that being able to find your voice and your style is about 1,000,000 times easier when you understand the how behind photography. I always say that photography is part technical and part artistic. It's hard to be artistic and soulful and creative with your photos and infuse them with voice and style when you don't have the technical knowledge that will allow you to put that into practice. So if you start trying to find your photography voice and your style before the how, you can start to feel disheartened because what you were intending to create is different from what you actually end up creating because you don't have the skills to bring that vision to life. Now, if you are feeling that, you want to learn more about your voice in photography, but you don't think your skills are quite there, you don't really understand light in and out, or you don't understand your camera, or your editing is a little bit ropey, you are using presets, for example, then I do want to encourage you to truly learn your craft. Now, we do have some free classes that can help you in all aspects of photography, from mastering your camera to light and composition and even editing. So be sure to go to the show notes for this episode where I'll link to some of them for you. And make sure that you subscribe to our email list. I'll have a link there for you as well. And that way you can hear about the ones that we have coming up too. You'll find everything over at livesnaplove.com/7. So I'm so glad that you've joined me today. I really, really enjoyed recording this episode for you because it actually helped spark something in me as well, which was a desire to get out there with my camera and really try to infuse more of my unique voice into my work and to try and worry less about what other people think. I hope that this episode has done the same for you. So if you already feel happy with your style, or you're still figuring it out, or this has confused you even more, come over to the show notes and let me know. You can find them at livesnaplove.com/7, or come and find me on Instagram or Facebook. I'm at livesnaplove on both of those places. I'd love to hear and connect from you. So I hope you have an amazing week, and I can't wait to talk to you again soon. See you next week. So that wraps up this week's episode of Photography Made Simple. I'll be back at the same time, same place next week. But if you want more, head on over to livesnaplove.com/podcast, where you can find all the resources and the downloads mentioned, plus a whole lot more. Finally, if you enjoyed the podcast, please be sure to subscribe, and that way you won't miss an episode. Thanks so much for joining me, and I'll see you again next week.